My name is Michael Mike Carter, and the night my wife told me she was taking my stepdaughter to spend Christmas with her ex-husband, she slammed the kitchen door so hard the windows rattled. She stood there in the yellow kitchen light, one hand still on the doorknob, the other pointed straight at my chest. Her nails were freshly painted red, glossy and sharp, and her voice was steady, almost rehearsed. "Emily needs her real father," Linda said, clear as a church bell. "If you don't like it, divorce me." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I wiped the sawdust off my hands with a paper towel, sat down at the kitchen table, opened my old laptop, and finally accepted the job transfer to Japan I'd been turning down for years. At the time, she thought she owned everything. It hadn't started with yelling. It never does. It started on a gray Tuesday in Cedar Falls, Iowa, the kind of December day where the sky hangs low and the salt on the roads crunches under your boots. People walked hunched against the cold, heads down, just trying to get through another workday before Christmas. I'd worked a full shift at the paper mill, stayed late to quiet a motor that wouldn't stop humming, then stopped by Hy-Vee for milk and a rotisserie chicken. When I opened the front door, the house smelled like cinnamon and pine. The little artificial Christmas tree in the corner was already lit, colored lights blinking softly in the front window. That was Emily's doing. She was 10 and treated Christmas like a full-time job. She came sliding down the hallway in her socks the moment she heard the door. "Daddy Mike," she said, breathless. "Did you fix the dollhouse roof?" I lifted the small wooden dollhouse I'd been working on in the basement. Linda had found it beat up at a yard sale. I'd spent 3 evenings sanding it, gluing it back together after work, my hands stiff from cold and age. "Give it a try," I said. Emily leaned both hands on the little pink roof. It didn't move. Her face lit up. "I told Mom you could fix it," she said proudly. "You always fix everything." I smiled, but something tugged tight in my chest. I wished that were true. In the kitchen, Linda stood at the stove with her back to me, stirring a pot of sauce. Her shoulders were tight raised, just enough that I could tell she was irritated. I'd learned over the years you could read her mood by how high they sat. "Hey," I said, putting the milk in the fridge. "We got the Christmas bonus today. It's not huge, but it'll cover that bike and then some." She didn't turn around. "We need to talk. Those 4 words are never about anything good." "Okay," I said carefully. "About what?" She turned off the burner, set the spoon down, and faced me. She was wearing a nice blouse lipstick, still perfect from work. It struck me that she dressed more carefully for someone else than she ever did for a quiet night at home. "I talked to Daniel," she said. Daniel Brooks, her ex-husband, the man who missed birthdays and parent-teacher conferences but always had an excuse ready. About what I asked, though, my stomach had already tightened. About Christmas, she said, like it should have been obvious. "He invited us to the cabin this year. He wants to make up for lost time with Emily." "Linda," I said slowly, "we already have plans. Church service, dinner at St. Luke's, your parents." She waved her hand, dismissive. "Those aren't plans, they're habits. Folding chairs, potlucks. Emily deserves a real Christmas, a cabin, a real tree with her real dad." She hit that word like a hammer. I stood there, the fridge door still open behind me, cold air spilling out. "I thought I was part of that," I said quietly. "I'm the one here. I take her to the dentist. I read to her at night. I show up at school." Her mouth twisted. "You're her stepfather," she said flatly. "Don't make this about you. You knew what you were signing up for. Daniel is her actual father. She needs that bond." Something small and quiet broke inside my chest. Not a snap, more like an old board finally giving way. "And where do I fit in?" I asked. She shrugged. "You don't. Not this time." She said they were leaving on the 23rd, a full week at the cabin. Daniel was picking them up. If I couldn't handle it, she said I could file for divorce, or she would. She delivered it like a line she'd practiced all afternoon. From the living room, Emily's voice floated in. "Mom, are we watching the Christmas movie tonight?" Linda didn't answer her. Her eyes stayed locked on mine, waiting for the reaction she was used to, pleading, arguing, explaining myself like a teenager caught breaking curfew. This time I didn't give it to her. I thought about the email sitting flagged in my inbox. Final offer, plant maintenance supervisor, Japan. I'd turned it down 3 times because Linda didn't want to leave Iowa, didn't want to leave her salon, didn't want to be more than 10 minutes from her parents' house. I thought about my father who'd worked 35 years in the same factory and used to tell me, "Don't let anyone treat you like you're lucky just to be standing in the room." "I see," I said. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. "That's it," Linda demanded. "You're not going to yell, 'Call me selfish.' Threaten a lawyer." I shook my head. "Not tonight." She scoffed, muttered something about me being spineless, and turned back to the stove. I walked into the living room. Emily had lined up the little wooden family in front of the dollhouse. The dad figure stood closest to the door. "Movie time?" I asked. She grinned. "Can we do the black and white one again? With the angel, It's a Wonderful Life," I said. "Yeah, we can do that." She curled up under my arm blanket, pulled up to her chin. On the screen, George Bailey's life played out, every quiet sacrifice, every unnoticed choice. Halfway through, Emily fell asleep. I carried her to bed, tucked the quilt under her chin, and stood there listening to her steady breathing. Downstairs, the house felt different, hollow, even with Linda in the bedroom and the TV murmuring. I sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and pulled up the email from Tokyo. "Hi, Kenji," I typed. "If the position is still available, I'd like to accept." I read it twice. Then I hit send. I didn't pack that night. I didn't leave a note. I just sat at the kitchen table for a long while, listening to the furnace kick on and off, the ice maker clunking to life, ordinary house sounds that suddenly didn't belong to me anymore. The little whoosh of the email leaving my outbox had sounded louder than it should have, like a door closing somewhere far away. A week later, Linda came home screaming on the front porch, pounding on the door like she still owned the place. Back then, she really thought she did. But before all that, there was Japan. When the plane touched down, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Quiet. Not peace exactly, more like the stillness after a storm, when the air smells clean and you're not sure yet if the worst is over. Tokyo was bright even at night, lights moving in every direction. None of it belonged to me. The company put me in a modest apartment with a tiny kitchen, a narrow bed, and a window overlooking a street where businessmen hurried past under black umbrellas. Everything felt temporary, like I was borrowing someone else's life. The next morning, my supervisor, Kenji Nakamura, walked with me to the plant. He was tall, soft-spoken, polite in a way that didn't feel forced. When he introduced me to the crew, he bowed slightly. They bowed back. "People here work hard," he said as we put on our safety gear, "but we take care of each other. You'll fit in." It felt strange after years of walking on eggshells at home, respect offered without conditions. During my first week, I kept checking my phone. No messages from Linda, which didn't surprise me. She could go weeks pretending I didn't exist if it suited her. But Emily, I waited for something. A question. A picture. Anything. So I sent the first message. "Hey kiddo, hope you're having fun. I'm in Japan now. Miss you." No reply. The next day I tried again. "Sent you a little gift. Might take a week to arrive. Love you." Still nothing. A few nights later, I bought a small charm from a convenience store near my apartment, a little wooden fox, a symbol of protection. I mailed it to Cedar Falls, not caring that it cost more than it should have. Walking home, I passed a family father, mother, daughter, laughing as the girl jumped over every crack in the sidewalk, holding both their hands. I stopped and watched them disappear around the corner. That's when the guilt hit. Heavy, settling right on my chest like a hand pressing down. Had I abandoned Emily? Had I really been any better than Daniel disappearing when things got uncomfortable? I told myself I needed time, space, clarity. But guilt has a way of sneaking in like cold air through old windows. Every night I checked my email. Every night nothing. One Saturday I went out for ramen with a younger coworker named Hiro. He noticed me checking my phone again and again, waiting for someone he asked. I hesitated. My daughter. Well, my stepdaughter. He nodded slowly. Complicated. You could say that. He studied me with the same quiet patience I'd seen on the factory floor. Family matters are never simple, he said, but truth always shows itself. I didn't know then how right he'd be. The twist came the following Tuesday. I was sitting on my apartment balcony eating vending machine soba when I opened Facebook, something I rarely did. At the top of my feed was a photo posted by a neighbor back in Iowa. Linda and Emily stood in front of a snow-covered cabin. Linda wore a red sweater I recognized because I'd bought it for her last Christmas. And next to them was Daniel wearing my old green Christmas sweater, the one with the stitched pine tree Emily loved because she said it looked happy. They all looked perfect. A picture book family. Family Christmas at the cabin. The caption read, with 2 heart emojis. I stared at the photo until my food went cold. It wasn't just jealousy or betrayal. It was the realization that Linda had looked me in the eye, told me Emily needed her real father, and then stepped neatly into the life she'd always wanted without me. I zoomed in on the picture, and that's when the second punch landed. Emily wasn't smiling. Not really. Not the crinkly-eyed grin she always gave me. She looked confused, lost, like a kid told to stand still for a picture she didn't want to take. Something broke and fixed inside me at the same time. 2 days later, I was in the break room when Satoshi, another coworker, walked in holding his phone. "Mike," he said carefully, "is your last name Carter?" "Yeah." He turned the screen toward me. It was a legal notice posted on a county website. Divorce filing. Linda Carter versus Michael Carter. Reason abandonment. Filed 3 days after I left for Japan. My chest went hollow. "She's saying you left with no intention to return," Satoshi said gently. "That the house and assets should go to her." She knew, I whispered. She watched me accept the job. He nodded. Sometimes people choose lies when the truth is inconvenient. I checked my email again. Nothing from Emily. The tracking app showed the Fox charm had been delivered 2 days earlier. No response. That's when the anger came. Not loud, not explosive. Cold, focused, settling deep. I wasn't going back to Iowa to fix my marriage. I was going back to protect a little girl who deserved the truth. I booked my return flight that night. When I landed back in Iowa, the air burned my cheeks the moment I stepped outside. Waterloo Regional Airport was quiet, families in boots dragging luggage across dirty snow. No one was there to meet me. That was fine. I checked into a small room at the VFW post on Franklin Street. It smelled like old wood and strong coffee. Solid, honest, the kind of place you stay when you've got work to do. That afternoon, I drove past my house. The wreath still hung crooked on the door. The little tree blinked in the window. I didn't stop. I needed information before confrontation. My first stop the next morning was Black Hawk Credit Union. I hadn't planned it that way, but my feet took me there without thinking, like muscle memory. The lobby smelled faintly of copier toner and pine-scented cleaner. A paper wreath hung crooked behind the counter. The teller, Denise Parker, blinked when she saw me. "Mike, I thought you moved overseas." "Not permanently," I said. "Just visiting." She lowered her voice. "Your wife was in here yesterday. That didn't surprise me. What did she want?" "She tried to pull everything from your joint account," Denise said. "All of it. When we told her she needed your signature, she asked to speak to the manager, then the board. And we asked her to leave." I let out a slow breath. Did she say why? "She said you abandoned the family, that she needed the money for emergency expenses." I nodded. "Didn't work, I'm guessing." Denise slid a printed statement across the counter. "Your transactions on one page, her attempted withdrawals on the other." I folded the paper carefully. "Thanks, Denise." She hesitated. "You look tired." "I'm working on it." Outside, the cold hit hard. I sat in my truck for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, letting the engine idle. It wasn't anger yet. It was confirmation. My next stop was Hy-Vee. I wasn't hungry, but half the town passed through those aisles, and in places like Cedar Falls, rumors didn't whisper, they walked. I pushed a cart slowly past the produce, listening. Ran off with someone in Japan, I heard. Poor Linda left with the girl and all those bills. She sure knows how to pick 'em. I rounded the corner and nearly collided with Sandy Collins, one of the cashiers who'd rung up my groceries for years. Her eyes widened. "Well, I'll be damned," she said. So she was lying. Sounds like it. She told everyone you skipped town with a woman half your age after blowing the Christmas bonus. I shook my head. Not true. Sandy crossed her arms. Didn't think so. You always struck me as steady. She's been in here 3 times this week complaining about everything. I finally stopped asking how she was. I appreciated that more than she knew. "She's going to have a fit when she realizes you're back," Sandy said. "Be careful." That night I spread everything out on the bed at the VFW. Bank records, printed emails, screenshots, the divorce filing the word abandonment stamped across it like a verdict. But the thing that hit hardest wasn't legal. It was Emily's drawing. She'd given it to me before they left me and her holding hands next to a Christmas tree. I sat there staring at it, wondering if she thought I'd left because of her, wondering if she believed I didn't want to be her dad anymore. That thought nearly took the air out of me. The next morning I called the school. They transferred me to the counselor, Mrs. Callahan. "Mike," she said, relief in her voice. "I'm glad you called. You've talked to Emily?" "Yes." She's confused. That word again. She asked where you went. Mrs. Callahan continued. "I told her sometimes adults have complicated things to work out, but that you love her." And she cried. She said her mother told her you chose Japan over her. My grip tightened around the phone. Did Linda really say that? "Yes," she said gently. "I'm sorry." When the call ended, I sat there staring at the wall. Whatever guilt I'd been carrying evaporated. I hadn't failed Emily. She'd been lied to, and I wasn't going to let that stand. I spent the next 2 days building my case. Eric Miller, an old friend from high school who now practiced law behind a Casey's gas station, met me on his lunch break. He flipped through the binder and whistled low. "She really stepped in it," he said. "Abandonment filing 3 days after a documented work transfer, asset grabs, blocking contact with a child. Will it be enough?" I asked. He nodded. "The judge won't like any of this. Just stay calm. Don't confront her. Let the court do the talking." That was the hardest part. On the morning of the hearing, snow drifted across the courthouse steps. The Black Hawk County Courthouse loomed gray against the sky. Inside, radiators hissed. Boots echoed on tile. Eric shook my hand. "You ready as I'll ever be." Linda arrived late, wearing a long red wool coat with a fur-lined collar. Her lawyer trailed behind her, young, expensive, confident. She didn't see me at first. When she did, she froze. The judge entered. Judge Patricia Wilson, steel gray hair, glasses low on her nose. She scanned the file, then looked up. "Mr. Carter," she said. "I wasn't expecting you." Linda folded her hands. "Your Honor." He abandoned Eric, stood. "Objection." The judge raised a hand. "We'll hear from Mr. Carter first." I stood. My hands shook, but my voice didn't. "I left the country after my wife told me my daughter needed her real father," I said, "and that if I didn't like it, I could divorce her. I accepted a job I'd turned down for years for this family." I slid the emails forward. The bank records, the tracking confirmations. "I did not abandon my family," I said. "I was pushed out and then erased." Linda slammed her hand on the table. "He's lying." The judge looked at her coolly. "Mrs. Carter, you'll have your turn." When Sandy stood as a witness, the room shifted. When the judge spoke again, her voice was firm. "Sometimes real fathers are the ones who stay." The gavel struck. And then I heard it. Daddy Mike. I turned. Emily stood in the doorway, eyes wet, smiling the real smile. She ran to me and wrapped her arms around my waist. "I knew you didn't leave me," she whispered. I held her as the room emptied. I wasn't the man who left. I was her dad. For the first time in years, the house was quiet in a way that didn't feel lonely. It wasn't empty. It was settled. Under the court's temporary order, I moved back in while the guardian ad litem conducted her evaluation. Emily stayed every other night at first. On the nights she wasn't there, I still found myself listening for her footsteps in the hallway. The soft tap of socked feet, the faint hum she made when she brushed her hair. That kid had a way of filling a space even when she wasn't speaking. The first night she slept over, she woke up around 2 in the morning. I felt the mattress dip before I heard her. She didn't say a word. Just slid under the blanket and wrapped one arm around my chest like she was afraid I might disappear if she let go. "I'm still here," I whispered into the dark. She nodded against my shoulder and didn't move again. A few days later, the guardian arrived. Donna Hughes stood on the porch in a navy coat, clipboard tucked under her arm. She had the calm posture of someone who'd seen a lot of broken families and learned not to flinch. She walked through the house slowly, asking questions without judgment. Where Emily kept her school projects, who helped her with homework, who she went to when she had a bad dream. When did she start calling you Dad? Donna asked, pausing in the doorway of Emily's room. When she was 3, I said. I never asked her to. Donna nodded, making a note. That matters more than people think. That evening I made grilled cheese and tomato soup, nothing fancy. Emily dipped the corners of her sandwich into the bowl and declared it gourmet. She told me about school, about her friend Clara's new puppy, about a drawing she was making for Donna. I can draw anything I want, she said. So I'm drawing us at the Christmas festival, the one with the popcorn machine and the ice sculptures. My throat tightened. That sounds perfect. It is, she said, smiling wide enough to show the gap where her front tooth used to be. That was a good night. One of the best we'd had in a long time. The calm didn't last. The following Monday morning, snow fell thick enough to hide the cracks in the driveway. I'd just poured a cup of coffee when I heard a car door slam hard enough to rattle the window. Then another. Footsteps crunched fast across the snow. The pounding came next. "Open this door right now," Linda screamed. I set my mug down, took a slow breath and walked to the door. When I opened it, freezing air rushed in along with the sound of her ragged breathing. She stood there wild-eyed, coat unbuttoned, boots soaked through. "You think you won?" she yelled. "You think this is over?" "You don't have a legal right to be here," I said calmly. She stepped forward until her boots hit the threshold. "That judge humiliated me. You ruined my life." I told the truth. I said. The court did the rest, her hands clenched into fists. "You stole my daughter. She isn't something to steal," I said. "And you know that." For a moment something flickered across her face. Not anger, fear, recognition. Then it vanished. Behind her, a truck idled in the driveway. I looked past her and recognized it immediately. Daniel's truck. He sat behind the wheel arms folded, staring straight ahead. He didn't get out, didn't wave, didn't even look at her. Linda turned and followed my gaze. "You can leave now," she snapped at him. He didn't respond. He put the truck in reverse and backed out of the driveway without a word. That was the moment everything shifted. Linda spun back toward me, her voice shrill. "He's a coward. You're both cowards." I held the door open. "You should go." She screamed, then a sound full of frustration and collapse, stomped back into the snow, slipped once on the ice and kept going, muttering curses as she disappeared down the sidewalk. I closed the door. The sound was final. 2 hours later, an email landed in my inbox from Daniel Brooks, subject, "About everything." I hesitated, then opened it. "Mike, I didn't know about the lies. I didn't know she filed abandonment or blocked your contact with Emily. After the courtroom, I realized I don't want to be part of that either. For what it's worth, you're the only real father Emily has ever had." I read it twice. Not forgiveness, not friendship, just truth finally arriving from an unexpected place. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the living room in soft orange light, Emily climbed onto the couch with something hidden behind her back. "I made you something," she said. She handed me one of the small wooden figures from the old dollhouse set, the dad figure. Only now she'd painted the shirt brown like my Carhartt jacket. She'd added flecks of gray to the hair. On the base, in blocky 10-year-old handwriting, she'd written "Dad." "It looks like you," she said. I had to swallow before I could speak. "It's perfect, kiddo." She leaned her head against my arm. "We can fix everything now, right?" I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. "Yeah," I said softly. "We can." Later that night, after she fell asleep, I stood by the living room window watching the porch light glow against the snow. Revenge hadn't come from shouting or bitterness. It came from standing still while lies unraveled on their own. From letting truth speak louder than anger. From choosing one small, steady act at a time. And from choosing her every single time. The weeks that followed moved slowly, the way real life does after something breaks and then settles into a new shape. Emily stayed with me most nights while the court process continued. Donna came by again, then again after that. Each visit was quieter than the last. Less questioning, more observing. She watched how Emily did her homework at the kitchen table, how she reached for my hand when we crossed the street, how she talked about school without glancing over her shoulder first. One afternoon, as Donna packed up her clipboard, she paused at the door. "You didn't fight to be called her father," she said. "You just showed up. Judges notice that. Kids do too." After she left, Emily asked, "Does that mean I get to stay?" I crouched in front of her and met her eyes. "It means we're doing everything right, together." That seemed to be enough. Linda didn't come back after that morning on the porch. Not in person. Her lawyer sent a few stiff emails, requests, complaints, nothing that stuck. The financial audit moved forward. The attempted withdrawals came back to haunt her. The lies she'd told the town unraveled one by one, not because I corrected them, but because the truth doesn't need help for very long. People started nodding at me again in the grocery store. The same people who'd whispered weeks earlier now asked how Emily was doing. Small-town justice isn't loud. It's slow, but it's thorough. One evening I found Emily sitting on the living room floor with the dollhouse. She'd rearranged the figures again. This time the little wooden dad stood in the kitchen. The mom figure was placed carefully off to the side, not angry, not erased, just separate. "Is that okay?" she asked. I nodded. Families can look lots of ways. She smiled, relieved, and went back to her tiny world. Near the end of the month, the court's decision came through. Primary custody, supervised visitation, clear boundaries spelled out in black and white. When I read the last page, I didn't feel victorious. I felt calm. That night, Emily and I made popcorn and watched the Christmas movie we'd never finished. When George Bailey realized how much his life mattered, Emily squeezed my hand. "That's you," she said. I didn't correct her. Later, after she'd fallen asleep, I stood by the window again, watching the snow drift under the porch light. The same street. Everything looked familiar, but nothing felt the same. I thought about Japan, about how I'd run halfway across the world to find quiet, only to realize the quiet I needed wasn't distance. It was honesty. I never went back. Kenji emailed once saying the door was open if I ever changed my mind. I thanked him and closed the message. Some chapters are meant to stay closed. A few months later, an envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a short note written carefully like someone had practiced. "I was wrong. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I see it now." It wasn't signed. I folded the note and put it away. Some realizations come too late to fix things. That doesn't make them useless. It just makes them quiet. That spring, Emily and I planted a small tree in the backyard, a young maple barely taller than she was. She packed the dirt down with her sneakers and stood back, hands on her hips. "How long till it's big?" she asked. "A while," I said. "But it'll grow. So will I," she said, grinning. I believed her. Sometimes late at night I think about that first evening in the kitchen, the slammed door. The finger pointed at my chest. The words meant to shrink me down to something replaceable. "You're just the stepfather." She was wrong. I didn't win by yelling. I didn't win by proving her wrong in public. I won by staying steady, by choosing patience over panic, by letting the truth arrive in its own time, and by loving a child who needed someone to stay. If you've ever been pushed aside, if you've ever been told you weren't real enough, important enough, or permanent enough to matter, this is your reminder. Sometimes the quiet ones are the ones who last. And sometimes the greatest revenge is simply living a life that no longer belongs to the people who tried to erase you. Life didn't snap back into place all at once. It eased in slowly like a house warming up after a long winter. Emily settled into routines again, homework at the kitchen table, Saturday mornings with pancakes, Sunday afternoons at the park, even when it was still cold enough to sting your fingers if you forgot gloves. She laughed more, louder. The kind of laugh that came from her chest, not the careful one she'd used before. One evening as I washed dishes, she sat on the counter swinging her legs. "Dad," she said casually, like she'd been using the word her whole life. "Why didn't Mom want you to be my dad?" I didn't answer right away. Some questions don't need a full truth. They need the right truth. Sometimes I said people are scared of losing control. She frowned. "You don't try to control me." "No," I said. "I just try to be here." She thought about that for a moment, then nodded, satisfied. A few days later, Donna called. The final report was nearly done, but there was something else, something she thought I should know. "Emily talked a lot about the years before you," she said, "about the nights Daniel didn't show up, about waiting by the window." I closed my eyes. "She remembers you being the one who stayed." Donna continued. "She remembers you lying on the floor next to her bed when she was sick. That's not something kids forget." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet house thinking about all the moments I'd assumed didn't count. All the small, ordinary things I'd done without expecting credit. Linda never knew about most of them. She never knew how many nights I'd sat awake listening for Emily's breathing when she had a fever, or how many times I'd fix something broken just so Emily wouldn't think the world was unreliable. And she never knew that when she told me I wasn't real, she was wrong in the only way that mattered. Because kids know. Spring came early that year. The snow melted fast, leaving behind wet sidewalks and the smell of damp earth. Emily and I stood in the backyard watching the maple tree bud for the first time. "It's working," she said proudly. "Yeah," I said. "It is." One afternoon, as we were getting ready for school, there was a knock at the door. Not loud, not angry, just a knock. I opened it to find Linda standing on the porch. She looked smaller somehow, tired. No red coat this time, no sharp lipstick, just a plain jacket and hands tucked into her sleeves like she didn't know what to do with them. "I won't stay long," she said. "I didn't invite her in. I didn't shut the door either." "I wanted to see her," Linda said quietly. Emily peeked around the corner behind me. She didn't run forward. She didn't hide. She just stood there watching. Linda's eyes filled. "You look so grown." Emily nodded. "I am." There was a long pause. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," Linda said. I thought if I kept control, things wouldn't fall apart. "And did they?" I asked. She shook her head. "I won't fight anymore," she said. "I just want her to know I didn't stop loving her." Emily stepped forward then. Just one step. "I know," she said simply, "but Dad didn't stop either." Linda flinched, not in anger but in realization. She nodded once, turned and walked away. No yelling, no threats, no victory speech, just the sound of gravel under her shoes fading down the driveway. That night after Emily fell asleep, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the same table where everything had cracked open months earlier. Silence filled the room again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was earned. By summer, the house no longer felt like a place we were surviving in. It felt like home. Emily's laughter filled the rooms in small, ordinary ways. The back door slammed a little too hard when she ran outside barefoot. The radio played too loud on Saturday mornings while she danced in the kitchen, making up her own words to songs she didn't quite know yet. The dollhouse stayed on the living room shelf, its tiny figures rearranged every few days as if she were quietly rewriting the world until it made sense. Some nights after she fell asleep, I sat on the back steps and listened to the cicadas hum in the trees. Cedar Falls looked the same as it always had. Same streets, same neighbors, same slow rhythm of a town that never rushed anything important. But I was different. I no longer felt the need to explain myself, or justify the choices I'd made, or prove I belonged anywhere. Belonging had shown up on its own. One evening, Emily came out carrying the small wooden fox I'd mailed from Japan months earlier, the one that never reached her then. "I found this in Mom's old stuff," she said. "She said it was yours." I took it from her hand, surprised it had survived everything. The paint was chipped now, one ear slightly worn. "It's for protection," I said. She smiled and placed it carefully on the windowsill beside her bed. Then it worked. School started again in the fall. New backpack, new shoes, new routines. I walked her to the bus stop the first morning the same way I had for years. But this time she didn't hesitate when the driver asked who was picking her up later. "My dad," she said, pointing back at me. The word landed gently. No ceremony, no announcement, just truth. I watched the bus pull away and stood there a moment longer than necessary, feeling something settle deep in my chest. A quiet certainty. The kind you don't need to share with anyone. Linda faded into the background after that. Not erased, just distant, supervised visits, short conversations, fewer words each time. Emily came back calm, not shaken. She talked about homework, about friends, about the tree in the backyard that was finally growing leaves wide enough to cast shade. One afternoon, as we sat beneath it, Emily leaned her head against my shoulder. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "some people think loud means strong." I laughed softly. "Yeah, some people do. But loud breaks," she said. "Quiet stays." I looked down at her surprised. "Where'd you hear that?" She shrugged. "I didn't, I just know. Kids have a way of learning the lessons adults spend years avoiding. As the months passed, people stopped asking questions. The story lost its sharp edges. New gossip took its place. That's how small towns heal, by moving on without fanfare. Every once in a while, someone would say, "You handled that well," or "I don't know how you stayed so calm." I never knew what to say. The truth was, I hadn't stayed calm because I was strong. I'd stayed calm because I was tired of fighting battles that never needed noise in the first place. The real work had been showing up, day after day, when no one was watching, when it would have been easier to disappear. The night before Emily's birthday, I found her asleep with the wooden dad figure clutched in her hand. The paint was smudged now, worn from being carried everywhere. I stood there a long time listening to her breathe. There are moments in life that feel like finish lines, victories, triumphs. This wasn't one of those. It was something quieter, something better. It was the understanding that the people who try to erase you often do it because they're afraid of what you represent. Stability, consistency, a mirror they can't control. And when you don't react the way they expect, when you don't crumble or chase or beg to be seen, the truth has room to breathe. It always does. On the first cold night of winter, Emily and I watched the snow fall from the living room window. The porch light cast the same soft glow it always had. "Dad," she asked. "Yeah, you're not going anywhere, right?" I smiled. "No, I'm right here." She nodded, satisfied, and leaned into my side. That was it. No courtroom, no speeches, no last confrontation, just two people who chose each other when it mattered. If you're watching this and you've ever been told you weren't enough, that you weren't real, that you were replaceable, remember this. The ones who stay don't need to announce it. And the strongest revenge isn't destruction. It's endurance. It's building a life so steady, so honest, that the lies simply can't survive in it. And in the end, that quiet life is the only victory that lasts.